welcome back to another video. My name's Mayanthi, I'm a qualified counsellor and I make videos on how I became a counsellor and what you might want to know if you're looking to become a counsellor as well. I also share bits and pieces of my life, so please enjoy this video and subscribe if you want to continue seeing my videos as well. So in this video I wanted to talk about what you might be thinking about studying if you're looking to become a counsellor. So it's not very clear out there what you actually need to study to become a counsellor and the process of becoming a counsellor, but the three main kind of courses or degrees slash fields that you can look into are social work, counselling and psychology. So in terms of what the difference is between the three of them, so social work is more working within the community and doing different roles that include using counselling skills, but may not be a fully counselling role. So you may not be sitting in a room doing that one-to-one counselling, but as a social worker you can still be a counsellor and you can use those skills if you get a job which involves that. So one of my earlier jobs was working with families and people who had been in care as they were children and they were now adults and they were having their own families and needing support navigating through that world. So they would come in, meet with me one-on-one, and I would sit with them and their child and see how they're going, look at how they're kind of interacting with their child and different play techniques and things like that. So even though I was in more of a social work case manager role, it still did involve that one-on-one work and it felt like it was like a counselling session. But when you do study social work, it depends where you study it. Some unis do have a counselling component or like a counselling unit subject part of the course, but some don't, and a lot of them can be very policy based and looking at different kind of social work models that people use in the community, and a lot of it is like case management and working with different groups of people like domestic violence, homelessness, as I did people who were in care, like foster care, adoption and institutions. And then you could also do like criminal work, so working in the kind of justice system. So there are lots of different areas, and I personally recommend social work even though I didn't study it, just from what I've heard from colleagues that I've had and people who have done social work. It may not be the most I don't know if interesting is the word, but it may not be the course that someone wants to do if they purely want to become a counsellor, because you do have to do other areas within your study that may not be of interest to you. But once you graduate as a social worker, you can register as a social worker, and the social work registration is quite recognised in Australia. So there are lots of jobs available if you know where to look and what to look for. So that's kind of a little snapshot of social work. In terms of psychology, I think most people know what a psychologist does, especially if you're looking to become a counsellor, you probably know about psychology, but I think some people wonder what the difference is between a psychologist and a counsellor. So in terms of psychology, to become a psychologist, you have to study the Bachelor of Psychological Science, the honours year, and then a clinical master's degree. So there are a couple of other pathways that did exist, and I'm not sure if they still do, but there are like internships or like placement type work you can do as part of your study to become a psychologist. But becoming a psychologist is quite difficult and competitive. So getting into the bachelor's degree is not too difficult. So that's from your year 12 score. But once you're in, if you want to study further, so if you want to get into the honours year, then you do have to keep up quite a high GPA. and it is quite competitive to get into the honours year as well, so not everyone gets in. And usually the Bachelor of Psychological Science is packed full of students, and getting into the honours year, not everyone in that cohort may want to get into the honours year, but a lot of them do, so it can be competitive. But if you get through to the honours year, that's generally, you do, I think, a thesis, and you do have to do research. But if you then get through that year, then you can apply for the clinical masters. But it's not, again, always guaranteed that you'll get in, and there's not many spots. So again, it is very competitive, and they don't just base it on your study background and your GPA. It's also based on any other experience that you might have outside of uni. So if you've done any work or volunteering or started something on your own, they do look at those as kind of entry factors for the masters, because they want people who are well-rounded, and you will be working as a psychologist in the end. So you do kind of have to meet that certain criteria. So I personally wanted to become a psychologist when I started uni, but I found as I went through that wasn't my path, so I didn't go down that way, but I did do the Bachelor of Psychological Science. So now we're up to counselling. So in terms of becoming a counsellor, that is a different path, because in Australia it's not quite a regulated profession yet. So technically anyone can call themselves a counsellor and practice as a counsellor, but it is obviously recommended that you have some study background in the counselling field, and you're not just, you know, calling yourself a counsellor and starting a private practice where you don't really have any experience behind you or any study background or qualifications, because you're working with people who may have mental health concerns, and it is quite risky. So I personally did the Masters in Counselling and Psychotherapy after I finished my bachelor's degree in psychology. So I felt like the master's degree was really well-rounded. It gave us a lot of insight into different therapeutic techniques and how to run a counselling session, and the best kind of, you know, listening strategies, and what kind of approaches to use with different sorts of people. So I personally do or would recommend the Masters of Counselling and Psychotherapy, but I know it can be a process to get there. So if you're looking to become a counsellor and kind of see what it's like without doing a master's degree, you can look into doing a smaller course, or if you know a specific area that you want to work in, so if it's relationship counselling or CBT or working with youth, you might be able to find like a small course out there that's run specifically for a certain type of therapy. I know there's like DBT courses and yeah, relationship counselling. So you can look into those specific courses, do that, and then kind of see if you feel comfortable practicing that with people as well. But becoming a counsellor, there are different pathways you can take, as I've kind of said. So it just depends what you want to do, where you want to get to in the end, which will then determine what you need to study. So I hope you found that information helpful. Let me know if you have any specific questions, or let me know what you're thinking of studying and where you think that will lead you, or where you want it to lead you. And if you have any specific questions about that,